Welcome to Shadowlands Ghosts, the place where the ordinary and the unknown collide. I'm your host, Raven Blackwood, and I'm glad you're joining me on this journey into the heart of darkness. You know, people often say that the most terrifying things are the ones we can't quite explain, the ones that lurk just beyond the edge of our perception. And I have to agree. There's something about the unexplained that draws us in like moths to a flame. As someone who's always been fascinated by the supernatural and the unknown, I've spent my fair share of time exploring the darker corners of our world. And let me tell you, I've seen some things that would make your skin crawl. But I've also learned that sometimes the most unsettling things are the ones that seem perfectly ordinary at first glance. A quiet town, a peaceful landscape, a mirror reflecting back at you. But what if that reflection isn't quite right? Speaking of which, I'd like to introduce you to our latest series, Reflections of Madness. It's a story about a town where every mirror shows a different version of reality. Sounds harmless enough, right? But trust me, it's not. In this town, the lines between what's real and what's not are constantly blurred, and the reflections in the mirror are just the beginning. So, if you're ready to take a journey into the heart of madness, be sure to subscribe to Shadowlands Ghosts and join our community of fellow horror enthusiasts. And as you listen to this story, keep in mind that you'll be experiencing it through the eyes of our lead character, someone who's about to find themselves trapped in a world where nothing is as it seems. So, sit back, relax, and try to keep your eyes off the mirror. I'd always thought of Ravenswood as a typical small town, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, and the local diner served as the town's gathering spot. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where the air was sweet with the scent of blooming flowers, and the sky was a brilliant blue on sunny days. My name is Emily, and I'd lived in Ravenswood all my life. I knew every nook and cranny, every hidden alleyway, and every shop on Main Street. Or so I thought. As I walked home from school that day, I noticed something odd. The sun seemed to be shining a bit too brightly, and the shadows seemed to be stretching out just a bit too far. I brushed it off as mere paranoia, but the feeling lingered. I quickened my pace, my eyes scanning the familiar streets as I made my way home. My best friend, Sarah, was waiting for me on the porch, her eyes fixed intently on something in her hand. "Hey, Em," she said, looking up as I approached. "Check this out." She held up a small, ornate mirror, the kind you might find in an antique shop. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I took it from her, the glass cool to the touch. I gazed into its depths, expecting to see my own reflection staring back at me. But what I saw was something entirely different. For a moment, I saw a version of myself that was slightly older, slightly wiser. Her eyes seemed to hold a deep sadness, and her smile was tinged with a hint of melancholy. I felt a jolt of surprise, and the mirror slipped from my fingers, landing with a soft thud on the porch floor. Sarah picked it up, examining it carefully. "What's wrong?" she asked, noticing the look on my face. I shook my head, trying to clear the cobwebs. "I don't know," I said, feeling a sense of unease creeping over me. I don't know what I saw." Sarah's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Maybe it's just the mirror," she said, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Maybe it's showing you something it doesn't want you to see." I laughed, trying to brush off the feeling of unease. But as I looked around at the familiar streets of Ravenswood, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That something was watching me from just beyond the edge of my perception. And that the mirror was just the beginning. As the days passed, I found myself becoming increasingly withdrawn. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. The mirror incident had left a lasting impression, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to it than just a simple trick of the light. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard a faint scratching noise coming from outside my window. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I strained to listen. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, and I knew I had to investigate. I cautiously made my way to the window, pulling back the curtains to reveal a dark shape perched on the sill. It was a bird, its feathers ruffled and its eyes glowing in the dark. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I gazed into its eyes, which seemed to hold a deep intelligence. The bird cocked its head to one side, its gaze never wavering as it began to speak. I swear, I'm not making this up. It spoke in a low, raspy voice that sent shivers down my spine. "Emily," it said, its voice dripping with an otherworldly tone. "You're being watched. You're being waited for." I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet as I desperately tried to get away from the window. The bird took flight, its wings beating loudly as it vanished into the night. I collapsed onto the bed, my heart racing and my mind reeling. What had I just experienced? Was I losing my mind? The next day, I confided in Sarah, telling her about the bird and its ominous message. She listened intently, her eyes growing wider with each passing moment. "That's freaky," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But maybe it's just a weird coincidence. Maybe the bird was just trying to get your attention or something." I shook my head. "No, Sarah, it was more than that. It was like the bird was trying to warn me of something. Something big." Sarah's expression turned serious. "Okay, let's assume the bird was trying to warn you of something. What do you think it could be?" I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. And then, like a bolt of lightning, it hit me. The strange occurrences, the eerie coincidences, the unexplained events. It was all connected somehow. "I think it's Ravenswood itself," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think there's something wrong with this town, something that's been hiding in plain sight all along." Sarah's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "I don't know exactly. But I think we need to start digging, Sarah. We need to uncover the truth about Ravenswood, no matter what it takes." Sarah nodded, her face set with determination. "You're on, Em. We'll get to the bottom of this together." As we set out to uncover the secrets of Ravenswood, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. That unblinking eyes were trained on us, waiting for us to make our next move. And I knew that once we started digging, there would be no turning back. As Sarah and I delved deeper into the mysteries of Ravenswood, the shadows seemed to grow longer and darker. Every step we took, every door we opened, felt like a betrayal of some unspoken trust. It was as if the town itself was watching us, waiting for us to uncover the secrets it had kept hidden for so long. We started by researching the town's history, poring over dusty old books and crumbling newspapers in the local library. The more we read, the more we realized that Ravenswood had always been a place of strange occurrences and unexplained events. People would go missing, only to turn up days later with no memory of where they'd been. Others would report seeing shadowy figures lurking in the woods or hearing disembodied voices in the dead of night. But it wasn't until we stumbled upon an old diary hidden away in the attic of the local antique shop that the true nature of the horror began to reveal itself. The diary belonged to a young girl named Abigail, who had lived in Ravenswood over a century ago. As we flipped through its yellowed pages, we discovered that Abigail had been plagued by the same strange occurrences that had been happening to me. She wrote about hearing whispers in the walls, about seeing shadowy figures lurking in the corners of her room. She wrote about feeling like she was being watched, even when she was alone. And as we read on, we realized that Abigail's experiences had been escalating, growing more and more intense until she finally vanished without a trace. The last entry in the diary was a single sentence scrawled in red ink. I have seen the face of the Watcher, and it is not of this world. As I read those words, a chill ran down my spine. I felt like I was staring into the abyss, with the abyss staring back at me. And then, like a bolt of lightning, it hit me. The Watcher, the figure that had been lurking in the shadows, was not just a person. It was a presence, a force that had been awakened by some unknown event. And then I saw it. A face, twisted and distorted, like a reflection in a funhouse mirror. The eyes were black as coal, and they seemed to bore into my very soul. I felt like I was drowning in their depths, like I was being pulled down into some dark and ancient abyss. The face was all around me, reflected in every window, every mirror. It was the face of the Watcher, and it was watching me. It was waiting for me. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet as I desperately tried to get away from the face. But it was everywhere, reflected in every surface. I was trapped with no escape. And then the face began to change. It began to contort and twist like a living thing. The eyes grew larger, more intense until they were all I could see. I was consumed by the face, swallowed whole by its darkness. And as I fell, I realized that I was not alone. Sarah was with me, her eyes wide with terror as she stared into the abyss. We were both being watched, both being waited for. And as the face loomed over us, its eyes burning with an otherworldly intensity, I knew that we were doomed. We were trapped in a living nightmare with no escape. The face was the face of Ravenswood, the face of the horror that had been hiding in plain sight all along. And as it loomed over us, its eyes burning with an ancient and malevolent power, I knew that we would never be able to escape its grasp. As I stared into the abyss, the face of the Watcher stared back at me, its eyes burning with an otherworldly intensity. The air was thick with an unspeakable malevolence, a feeling that seemed to sear itself into my very soul. I felt like I was being pulled apart, my mind shattered by the sheer horror of what I was seeing. Sarah's hand was clutching mine, her grip like a vice as she stared into the abyss alongside me. Her eyes were wide with terror, her face pale as the moon. I knew that she saw it too, the face of the Watcher, the face of Ravenswood. The face began to change, its features contorting and twisting like a living thing. The eyes grew larger, more intense until they were all I could see. I felt like I was drowning in their depths, like I was being pulled down into some dark and ancient abyss. And then the face began to speak. Its voice was like a rusty gate, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You should not have come here," it said, its voice dripping with malevolence. "You should not have looked." I tried to speak, but my voice was frozen in my throat. I tried to move, but my body was paralyzed with fear. I was trapped with no escape. The face loomed over us, its eyes burning with an ancient and malevolent power. I knew that we were doomed, trapped in a living nightmare with no escape. The face was the face of Ravenswood, the face of the horror that had been hiding in plain sight all along. And then, everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the floor, my head throbbing with pain. Sarah was beside me, her eyes wide with terror. "What happened?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I shook my head, trying to clear the cobwebs. "I don't know," I said, my voice shaking. "But I think we need to get out of here. Now!" We stumbled to our feet, our eyes scanning the room for any sign of the Watcher. But it was gone, vanished into thin air. We knew that we had to get out of Ravenswood, to escape the horror that had been lurking in the shadows. We ran, our feet pounding the pavement as we desperately tried to escape the Watcher. But I knew that we would never be able to escape its grasp. The face of the Watcher was etched into my mind, a constant reminder of the horror that had been hiding in plain sight all along. As we stumbled out of the town, I knew that I would never be able to forget the face of the Watcher. It was a face that would haunt me for the rest of my life, a constant reminder of the horror that had been lurking in the shadows of Ravenswood. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, even as we stumbled out of Ravenswood and back into the light of day. The face of the Watcher lingered in my mind, its eyes burning with an otherworldly intensity that seemed to sear itself into my very soul. As we made our way back to civilization, I couldn't help but wonder if we had truly escaped the horror that lurked in Ravenswood. The face of the Watcher seemed to be etched into my mind, a constant reminder of the terror that had been hiding in plain sight all along. But as the days passed, I began to notice something strange. Sarah seemed to be acting different. She would stare off into space, her eyes wide with a look of terror that I had come to recognize all too well. At first, I thought it was just the aftermath of our encounter with the Watcher, but as the days turned into weeks, I began to realize that something was terribly wrong. Sarah was changing, her eyes taking on a strange, otherworldly glow that seemed to be spreading across her face. One night, I woke up to find her sitting beside me, her eyes glowing with an eerie light. She turned to me, her voice barely above a whisper. "I see it," she said, her eyes wide with terror. "I see the face of the Watcher." And then she began to change. Her body began to contort and twist, her face stretching into a grotesque parody of the Watcher's face. I screamed, backing away in horror as I realized that the Watcher had been inside her all along, waiting for its chance to emerge. As I stumbled backward, I heard the Watcher's voice, its rusty gate-like tone echoing in my mind. "You should not have come here," it said, its voice dripping with malevolence. "You should not have looked." And then everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the floor, my head throbbing with pain. But as I looked around, I realized that I was alone. Sarah was gone, and I knew that I would never see her again. But as I stumbled to my feet, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye. A face, the face of the Watcher, staring back at me from the shadows. And I knew that I would never be able to escape its grasp. The face of the Watcher would haunt me for the rest of my life, a constant reminder of the horror that had been lurking in the shadows of Ravenswood. And as I stumbled out into the darkness, I knew that I would never be able to shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the Watcher was always just a step behind me, waiting for its chance to strike. The last thing I remember is hearing my own voice, whispering a single phrase over and over again. I see it. I see the face of the Watcher. And then everything went black. Epilogue: The Eternal Watcher. Years have passed since that fateful night in Ravenswood. I've tried to rebuild my life, to move on from the horrors that I witnessed in that forsaken town. But the face of the Watcher remains etched in my mind, a constant reminder of the terror that lurks in the shadows. I've tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, that the Watcher was just a product of my own fevered mind. But deep down, I know the truth. The Watcher is real, and it's still out there, watching and waiting. I've seen it in the faces of strangers, in the eyes of children. I've seen it in the shadows that dance upon the walls. The Watcher is everywhere, always watching, always waiting. I've tried to warn others, to tell them of the horrors that lurk in Ravenswood. But they just laugh, they just think I'm crazy. They don't understand, they don't see the face of the Watcher. But I see it. I see it every day, every night. I see it in my dreams, I see it in my waking moments. The face of the Watcher is forever burned into my mind, a constant reminder of the horrors that I witnessed in Ravenswood. And I know that I'm not alone. There are others out there, others who have seen the face of the Watcher. Others who have felt its presence, who have felt its malevolent gaze upon their skin. We are the watched, the ones who have been chosen to bear witness to the horrors that lurk in the shadows. We are the ones who have seen the face of the Watcher, and we will never be the same again. The face of the Watcher will haunt me for the rest of my life, a constant reminder of the terror that lurks in the shadows. And I know that I will never be able to shake the feeling that I am being watched, that the Watcher is always just a step behind me, waiting for its chance to strike. But I will not be silenced. I will not be deterred. I will continue to tell the story of the Watcher, to warn others of its presence. For I know that the Watcher is real, and it's still out there, watching and waiting. And when the darkness closes in, when the shadows seem to move of their own accord, I will whisper those words, those terrible, wonderful words. I see it. I see the face of the Watcher. And I will know that I am not alone, that there are others out there who have seen the face of the Watcher, who have felt its malevolent presence. The face of the Watcher will haunt me for the rest of my life, but I will not be afraid. For I know that I am not alone, that there are others out there who have seen the face of the Watcher. And together, we will bear witness to the horrors that lurk in the shadows. The Watcher is eternal, its presence a constant reminder of the terror that lurks in the shadows. But we, the watched, will not be silenced. We will not be deterred. We will continue to tell the story of the Watcher, to warn others of its presence. For in the end, it is not the Watcher that we should fear, but the darkness that it represents. The darkness that lurks in every corner of our minds, the darkness that threatens to consume us all. The face of the Watcher is just a symbol of that darkness, a reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadows. But it is also a reminder of the power of the human spirit, the power to resist, to overcome, to bear witness to the horrors that lurk in the shadows. And so, I will continue to tell the story of the Watcher, to warn others of its presence. For I know that I am not alone, that there are others out there who have seen the face of the Watcher. And together, we will bear witness to the horrors that lurk in the shadows, and we will not be silenced. Thank you for bearing witness to my story, for being brave enough to face the darkness that lurks in the shadows. I know that it's not an easy thing to do, to confront the horrors that I've experienced, but I'm grateful that you've taken the time to listen. As I've said, I'm not alone in my experience. There are others out there who have seen the face of the Watcher, who have felt its malevolent presence. And I know that you may be one of them. So, I want to ask you to join me on this journey, to join me in bearing witness to the horrors that lurk in the shadows. Subscribe to this channel, and together we'll explore the darker corners of our minds. We'll confront the fears that we've been trying to keep hidden. By subscribing, you'll not only be supporting me in my mission to tell the story of the Watcher, but you'll also be joining a community of like-minded individuals who are brave enough to face their fears, who are willing to confront the darkness that lurks within. So, please take the next step and hit that subscribe button. Let's face the darkness together, and let's show the Watcher that we will not be silenced. And as a special thank you for subscribing, I'll be sharing exclusive content, including behind-the-scenes insights into the making of these videos, as well as personal anecdotes and stories that I've never shared before. So, don't wait any longer, subscribe now, and join me on this journey into the heart of darkness. Together, we'll explore the horrors that lurk in the shadows, and we'll emerge stronger, braver, and more resilient than ever before. Thank you again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.